All right. Well, welcome to everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us in this great conversation. My name is Stanton Oster. I'm a board member with the YLS. And actually, my day job, I'm at Schaefer Insurance in our personal lines division, but love YLS, love the people in the group. The community of young professionals, just wanting to make this a better community. It's really what sold me on this. So I've been doing it for about 2 years and loving it. So United Ways YLS, for those that don't know, is hosting this series because we believe in equality, inclusion, and belonging. We have made it a priority to champion this cause and to live it out in our own organization. We're currently building a foundation of equity, inclusion, and belonging for the future of YLS. YLS is going through a program renovation, transitioning from a member-oriented group to a community building and impact movement. If you're interested in getting involved with our leadership team, now is your time. Please reach out to any of us via chat, email, phone call. We'd love to get you more connected. So for today's event, we invite you to join us in the 21-day Racial Equality and Social Justice Challenge. It's a powerful tool for educating yourself about systematic racism and racial inequalities faced by our community and beyond. You can find that link posted in the chat. We ask that you put actions behind your words and your passion, and also, if you're able, to give financially through service and support. Today, we're focusing our donation efforts towards Shora Foundation, Roots Collective, the Women of Knoxville, and Penultimate Development. They're doing the groundwork to resolve these very issues we're discussing. So we ask that you please consider supporting these organizations through a donation today. You can find these links also in the chat. So before I introduce our speakers, just a little bit on the Q&A. If you have some questions for these speakers, you can find that Q&A chat button in the top left. Put your questions in there, and then that'll give our speakers a chance to answer those. So now to what everyone showed up for, our three great speakers. First is Tanika Harper. Tanika is a Knoxville native and graduated from Austin East High School. She has a Bachelor of Arts in English, a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology, both obtained through University of Tennessee, and a Master's in Criminal Justice from the University of Cincinnati. Ms. Harper has ownership in 4 small businesses, starting the first in 2008, the Shora Foundation. Shora provides educational youth opportunities and small business development resources. Secondly, she's a partner in Elite Facility Maintenance, a commercial cleaning company. In 2014, she founded Harper's Natural LLC out of a need to have healthier skin due to an autoimmune disease. Lastly, in 2020, Ms. Harper helped co-found the Women Foundation, whose goal is to provide access to capital to Black-owned businesses. Through her entrepreneurial journey and community connections, she's built relationships that have allowed her to learn, earn, and return. Ms. Harper has been called to serve East Knoxville community, and she couldn't love it anymore. Everything she's done has led her to building community. With over 20 years of service to the community through organizations like Young Life, the Shora Foundation, and local churches, she's been blessed to get to know so many people and build lasting relationships. Tanika has one preteen daughter who's an exceptional competitive gymnast. They spend many long nights in the gym and enjoy traveling. She also loves spending time with her family and going to the movies. Our next speaker will be Kertisha Riley. Kertisha is the STEM and Healthcare Career Coach in the Center for Career Development and Academic Exploration at the University of Tennessee. She's worked in career services for almost 9 years, primarily in the counseling students through career planning, facilitating experimental engagement, and connecting with local employers to create learning and employment opportunities for students. Kertisha's background is in marriage and family counseling, draws her to consider her cultural backgrounds and family of origin impact our mental health, career development, and social and work relationships, especially among early career professionals. Originally from Florida, Kertisha transferred to Knoxville by the way of the Midwest, has been a member of this community for the past 6 years. Though a lot of her quote unquote free time goes into work and research within her doctoral program in the counselor education at UT, Kertisha believes it's importantly to do your own work as you engage and serve in the community. As such, initiatives like her Racial Justice Challenge or her involvement in diversity and inclusion team at her church and volunteering with many different organizations like Raising a Voice allow for her advocacy work, understanding social justice issues through her wellness lens, and integrating the growth and learning into every day. Our last speaker is DeAndre Jackson. DeAndre is the founder and CEO of Penultimate Development, a 10-year residency leadership program targeting at-risk young men from the ages of 18 to 24. The program goal is to transform followers to leaders, focusing on their personal, professional, and spiritual development. He owns and operates Penalt Place, a co-workspace in downtown Jefferson City, Tennessee. From 2005 to 2017, he served as the CEO of the Williams Creek Youth Foundation, overseeing the First Tee of Greater Knoxville, the Williams Creek Golf Course, and the WE Course Academic Learning Center. He was also a featured guest on the prestigious Halloran Hill show, Anything is Possible. In 2006, he was recipient of the MLK Chairs Award for Community Service and a graduate of the Consortium for Social Enterprise Effectiveness Program at the University of Tennessee. In 2013, he received the Community Service Award for 100 Black Men of Knoxville. In 2011, he was a member of Knoxville Leadership, and in 2008, a member of the Greater Knoxville Business Journal, 40 Under 40. He currently serves on 3 boards, the Mossy Oak Foundation as Economical Chair, Jefferson County Chamber of Commerce, and Thrive. He obtained a Master's of Business Administration from Carson Newman University and a Bachelor of Arts from UT in Urban Studies, where he was captain of the track and field team. He has been married to his wife for 20 years, and they have 3 children, Delaney, DeAndre, and Denver. In his spare time, he enjoys coaching basketball, track, golfing, fishing, hunting, skiing, riding, and spending time with his family and friends. At this point, I would like to invite Tanika to the stage as she will share with us her.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's uncomfortable but necessary conversation. I am so delighted to be here and share with you guys today. We have some great topics and great questions, and I hope that you guys engage with us as much as possible. If you have any questions for us, for the panelists, as we are speaking, please put those questions in the chat that says Q&A. It is the 3rd tab on the chat box, and it says Q&A. So we will look for your questions there. And at this time, I would love to bring up our panelists today, which is DeAndre Jackson and Kertisha Riley.
Hi, everyone.
And I guess we will wait on DeAndre to join us. Hope you guys are doing well today. We are really, really excited. Maybe some technical. Okay, so I just got notification that DeAndre is having some tech issues, which is fine. So he hopefully joining us in a few minutes, but I would just love to go ahead and kick us off. So today we are going to be talking about inequities in workforce development in Knoxville's Black communities. we really can't start that conversation without talking about how did the inequitable treatment of communities start and how did it happen? Some of us may think that um, desolate, under-resourced, poverty-stricken communities happen that way because the people within the community don't care about their community. And nothing is further from the truth. And so I know that a few weeks ago, or maybe a couple of months ago now, United Way had one of their first uncomfortable but necessary conversations, really around pretty much gentrification, urban renewal, and how all of that started. So we won't go into that real deep, but I do want to start this conversation off just by talking a little bit about the history here in Tennessee, here in our own backyard, and how some of these purposely designed communities happened. And so during the Depression in 1933, the Tennessee Valley Authority were willing to give jobs to both white workers and Black workers, and to help with the economic downturn of the Depression. But one of the things that they did was they built basically subdivisions, and I think they built about 500 of these homes within subdivisions for white families. And these white families could lease these properties while they were working for TVA. But the Black workers were not allowed to live in these subdivisions and lease these homes. Instead, they had to be miles away from the work site and live in what we may call a tent city. These were barracks, these were makeshift homes, something that would be temporary. And so through years of this type of government oppression through housing and through workforce development, you had African American towns without amenities, without resources. And we see the effects of that even still today. It wasn't until 1968 through the Fair Housing Act where it became illegal to discriminate through housing. And so we still see a lot of that today in our neighborhoods. So it's important for us as we have this conversation about inequities and oppression that we have to talk about the root and the cause and the source. And so one great resource that you can definitely read or look further into is The Color of Law, which is a book by Richard Rothstein. And so that is a great book to read to dive a little bit deeper into that conversation. So again, thank you for joining us. And we will hopefully be joined by DeAndre soon, but we will go ahead and get started with our conversation today. So Kertisha, as we know, there are inequities in Black Knoxville in the communities. And some of these inequities have led to an uptick in violent crime among our youth. And I know sometimes people don't really understand the connection between an under-resourced community and violent crime, but the two are so heavily related. And so I would love to get your take, and let's talk for a minute about poverty and how living in an under-resourced community can lead to crime in a community.
Yeah, Tanika, I love that you're starting here with this conversation, because I think, as I consider like my role in career services and just, the place it has with workforce development, you can't start this conversation without really diving into what pushes or what like propels, I would say, any, marginalized person, but definitely like if we're thinking about Knoxville and the Black community, what really pushes youth or any individual to engage in crime or, related behaviors. And so I think a lot of it is around this idea of survival. Like I need to live. I need to, take care of my family, take care of myself. And I'm going to do that by any means necessary. And so when you consider on a systemic level what this means, if the area, and as we just heard from you, as we've heard from other parts of the series, some pretty intentional ways that Knoxville has been boundaried in a way, or like structured in a way to foster these environments of desperation. And so when you do that from a city, even a state, and a federal and national level, all you're saying is we want to hoard resources and kind of divert resources away from certain communities, namely Black communities. And in such, we are encouraging this crime, this behavior, these survival tactics. So I think that's really why we're seeing an uptick in violent crimes and, what to me feels like cries for help, for, see us, hear us, resource us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's important because among youth, when we're talking about workforce development among youth, and that's one of the things, it's a hot topic right now because we are seeing an uptick in violent crime among kids as young as 13 and 14 years old, because when they look around their environment, you really can't talk about an under-resourced community without talking about hopelessness. So when you live in an under-resourced community, you live in a food desert. You live in an area where you walk out of your door and you can look and you can say, hey, if I don't go to college, there's nothing within so many miles that is for me. There are no apprenticeship programs. There are no vocational opportunities. There's no entrepreneurship program in my area. Then you're right. People go into survival mode, whatever that looks like. If I'm hungry, well, I got to eat. And that means, well, if I don't have money for it, then I may have to commit a crime to get it, right? And so it's important that we look at the layers of violent crime in under-resourced communities and what leads up to that. And so the next question is, so now that we've kind of tied the two together, under-resourced community and violent crime, or any type of crime for that matter, we have a responsibility, right?
Right.
So we cannot live in a city or live in an area and look at what's happening and not ask ourselves, what can we do? And I think a lot of people are really asking themselves that, what can we do? And so a question is, how can colleges and universities, businesses, nonprofits, and even the city and county work together to provide better opportunities through workforce development? And I know, you come from the university side. So if you want to speak, to that, and even talk about how partnerships can be created to even provide more opportunities to our youth. And when we say youth, I just want the audience to know we are talking about 14 to 24, 14 to 21. So the high school to young adult.
Yeah, so I would say from the university standpoint, I think there are a number of entry points for how we can positively impact workforce development for the Black community, for Black youth. I think a lot about, career services. I'm going to think about what are ways to get youth exposed to different fields, to different career paths. And that could be trade. It could be, a 2-year or 4-year institution. It could be, some sort of internship or just, work in general. So I think from a university standpoint, in an ideal world, I would love to see, a lot of faculty really focus on more of a community engaged approach. So this idea of let's, learn and start to understand the community that our university is embedded in, And let's look at ways that we can use what we already have to do, teach, research, service, all of these things, and connect that to needs that we see. So I think that's one way as a university we could have more engagement around this issue of lack of workforce development for Black youth. We see it a little bit with, there are a number of like bridge programs that the University of Tennessee has as this way of connecting youth from the community to, possibilities within a university. And those tend to be more focused on academics. So I'm going to always support that. But I think with that, we can talk through what really are your options? How can you find meaningful, gainful employment, even if it doesn't mean going to the university itself? So that's really where I see businesses, nonprofits coming in. You all are already doing work. And so why don't you have a shadowing program or an apprenticeship program, which could be as simple as, we hold a day event where we, invite youth from the community to see what we do, behind the scenes. Or it's something more structured like an internship or an apprenticeship or something like that. So I think those are some pretty tangible, kind of low-hanging fruit ways to really begin the process of integrating, this important focus into what is already happening in some of these settings.
Yes, and I think it's important that we talk about creating partnerships, or what some people are calling now like an ecosystem, exposing kids. And so everybody has a role to play. You have nonprofits, you have universities, you have businesses, you have the city, county, you have KPD. None of this works without the whole, right? Because if we, everybody has to play their part in the community as well. And so I think it is time for us to really come to the table and start forming real partnerships to really reach out and help our youth. And so one of the questions in the chat is, what are some things that high schools or after school programs can do to give students experience and opportunities? And so I think you really just kind of hit on that, Kertisha, right? Just talking about apprenticeship programs, jobs shadowing, internships. I know this summer with Shora Foundation, we are looking to have 2 to 3 high school youth, right, to work in our summer program, as well as college interns. So that's definitely some things you can do to put money in the pocket of kids, so they don't have to worry about where their next meal is going to come from, if they're going to be able to eat later, because hopefully they have money to go get them something or to do that. And college students, a lot of them are working through work study, so they're getting paid, but they still need the experience, right? And so it works twofold. And so I do think, to answer your question, that's what some high schools and after school programs can do. I encourage our high schools that serve traditionally under-resourced kids that you really look at your career technical education programs. One of the things our high schools can do is really be intentional about what types of programs they provide. We have to stop thinking construction, brick mason, the ones that we saw in the 80s and 90s, which those are great trades. Hear me when I say that. But kids are also interested in entrepreneurship, business administration, coding, engineering fields. So we really have to think about the new 21st century jobs and kind of what our youth are looking for.
Tanika, I want to add something, because when you were talking about the career and technical education part of it, I think that is, while it is a part of the conversation, I think, like you said, broadening is going to be important. And so with, the pandemic and kind of what we've had to do to go virtual in this world, I think we have a lot more access to some of these programs that might not be directly in our Knoxville community, but they could be something you can access virtually. And so looking for some of those boot camps, like I think I work with STEM students in my role, so I know a lot about like the coding boot camps and the different ways that you can gain more of those technical skills. And so it might not be just things that you have to create or find within Knoxville, but really thinking about what makes sense in my field. This goes for education, business, whatever you may be. Look at what are some of the resources that are coming out that are also virtual now.
Yeah, and so it's really looking at the new normal, and I think that's what I hear you saying, Kertisha, because that's true. And yes, it is really important. Somebody put in the chat about the transportation barrier, and we talked about that
Mm-hmm.
amongst ourselves even before we went live. Is that there is a transportation barrier, and what we're saying is we're not saying that there are not resources that exist, because there are tons. But what we're saying is those resources don't exist in the under-resourced communities, which is why it's an under-resourced community that doesn't have amenities, because those things don't exist. And so it is really, really important to provide these opportunities within the community, right? And so we were talking about jobs, manufacturing jobs at the forks of the river or at industrial parks, but the bus line doesn't run that far. So that's a transportation barrier to someone in an under-resourced community who doesn't have a vehicle to get there. And so although I know our youth in the community now have free bus passes, and that is awesome, and that is a great thing. But we still need to think about how can we expand the transportation line outside of communities. And so talking about bringing resources into the community is going to lead me to our next question. You know, as African Americans, we often hear and know of white organizations, churches, businesses that come into the Black community and start youth enrichment programs. So why is it important for those organizations to instead empower the Black-led organizations already there to do the work?
So I think about this from my perspective of just being involved in the community. And definitely, like, one of the first things I did when moving to Knoxville was do my best to get plugged into East Knoxville, because that's where I knew where my people were. That's where I knew like I could find community. And so I had the personal tools to be able to do that. But how I transitioned to Knoxville didn't afford me the immediate exposure to all facets of Knoxville. So as a young professional, when you transition, usually you get told about West Knoxville, and that's really it. And so I think, you know, before anything, you have to, one, accept and honor all parts of your city. And so for me, as I think about the work that a lot of predominantly white businesses, churches, what organizations do by coming into the community, to specifically East Knoxville, to do work, to, you know, help, serve, whatever it may be, I think there's a level of distrust. From the short amount of time that I've lived in Knoxville, it's very apparent that at the hand of the city and a lot of acts, like, I guess, parts of the city as well, has created distrust between white parts of Knoxville and the Black part of Knoxville. And so to me, in order to truly be impactful and honestly continue the work and in addressing some of the under-resourcing, you know, like the workforce development issues, fill in the blank, whatever else we're trying to address, I think you have to start with who lives and knows and breathes the community. And so that means, like, you might not be front and center, and really you shouldn't be front and center if you're a white organization or even a white individual coming in to help and assist. So to me, it's about centering who's already there, who's already doing the work, and lifting them up to continue that work and be more impactful in that work, because it's not, we're not able to care for ourselves in our own, as we don't have the resources. We make do. That, you know, hear me when I say this, Black people are resilient and we will figure it out, but it can be so much greater if we're supported in answering the call of that work instead of in competition with organizations that are coming in to do the same work we're already doing.
Yeah, and I love how you put it. It's not that we can't, do the work, we don't have the resources. And so I think that's important, that when you have people in the community already doing the work, that you continue to use your resources to help them continue to do the work, not come into the community and restart the work because you have the resources and you can. And so, DeAndre, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We have missed you, but you are here and on stage. So before we move on, I wanted to give you a chance to answer the question. We were on, we often see sometimes white organizations or businesses coming into Black communities and starting programs, be it youth enrichment or other types of programming that could benefit the community. But what is the benefit for those organizations to instead use their resources to empower the Black-led organizations already doing the work?
So first, I'm going to apologize. I think my laptop, Windows believed my laptop had COVID, so it gave it a vaccine and just said, hey, you know what? We're just going to spend the next 2 hours updating your laptop, 5 minutes before this conversation. But I've been working as a volunteer and leading, nonprofit organizations for over 20 years. And it's kind of disheartening to see that a lot of times when I sit amongst my nonprofit leader colleagues, the majority of the folks in the room, when I say the majority of the people in the room, there may be less than 5% of Black males leading nonprofit organizations in our community. And so not just leading those organizations, but on the leadership team of those organizations. So, the problem is bigger if we cannot even be trusted to lead the organizations that's serving our community. Okay, forget the TVAs and the University of Tennessee's and the private institutions and city and county government. We can't even be in positions of authority to lead, quote unquote, our people, right? So, I can't tell anybody what to do with their resources. But what I can tell you is that if you don't have people from the community that you're trying to serve leading your organization, there will always be trust issues. And, your impact will always be diluted. I don't know if that answers the question or not, Tanika.
No, it does. No, it's really, no, it definitely did.
It comes down to trust. At the end of the day, it comes down to trust. The people that whom you serve will have trust issues with your organization, right? Some funders, the majority of funders, have trust issues with Black-led organizations, right? And so the cycle, it just kind of repeats itself. And what you have at the end of the day is marginalized impact.
Yes. And so while you were talking about organizations not being Black-led organizations not being trusted by funders, I think that's important for people to hear when we're talking about doing this work. And so here's a statistic before we move on to our next topic. So there was a study done, and it was posted in the New York Times, and 45% of the study, 45% of the Black organizations received way less funding than their white counterparts. That's almost half, right? That didn't even come close to receiving the same amount of funding. And 33% of those Black organizations say they don't have a relationship with the funding partners, right? And so what that means is that maybe a board member went on their behalf, or maybe this came by way of just like a one-pager grant. But there's a lack of trust and there's a lack of relationship building between Black-led leaders and white founders and donors. And so we really have to work on that relationship building if there's going to be trust there. Saying, and we are encouraging our white allies and advocates and accomplices to do is empower us, right? Allow us to lead, allow us to be in a position to continue to serve our own communities, and help us and give us the resources to continue to do that well. DeAndre, you want to talk a little bit about penultimate development and what you guys are doing with Black men?
Yeah, so I started penultimate development in 2017 based on the need that I saw when in regards to a service gap. So there's a ton of youth serving organizations in the community. There's a ton, but there's not enough serving young folks well from from 4 to 18. But when kids hit 18, they've been going to these different organizations, pretty much their entire life. Now, all of a sudden they're on their own trying to figure out, how do I make that step, to live sustainable lives? How do I make that step to be an adult, to be a productive citizen? But they're alone doing it. And I saw what was happening within my own organization. We had great programming to get kids scholarships and get kids in college. But for the most part, only the kids that had a support system were taking advantage of those opportunities. And through mentoring that I was doing and I was a part of at that time, I saw it a great opportunity to use an organization that I worked for then to develop a leadership development program, a workforce development program, a personal development and spiritual development program supporting young African-American males between 18 and 24. That's who God has called me to touch, not that young ladies don't need that same type of support, because in the underserved community, they do. And so it's a 10-month program. When guys start here, we do some team building and we do some job readiness training for about a week and a half, and they go right to a 40-hour work week. And throughout the week, we're doing personal development, self-development, job readiness training. We're doing a lot of those things to help get them to transition and to determine how can they be successful for the long term. So we do a lot of long-term planning with them. I want after when they leave this program, they should have a 5-year plan, whether it be trade school, whether it be college, or it might be right to employment. I'm serving young men from out of Knoxville, but I do it in downtown Jefferson City. And my wife and I, we bought a building here, and we restored it. And also I have a co-working space within the building. It's a 5,000 square foot building. I'm on my second class right now. Did my first class in 2019 on into the pandemic. Pandemic happened. We pivoted. We kept on humping, kept on moving forward. And there's some organizations and people in the community that believe in what I'm doing and that are supporting what I'm doing. So that's penultimate development in a nutshell.
Yeah, and that's great. And I wanted him to talk about that a little bit so we could understand what workforce development programs could look like. There's no one size fit all, but it is something that, again, an organization is already doing, right? And so how can we take from that? How can we learn from that? How can we recreate that? Or how can we support somebody who is already established a great program, right? And so that is great. So Kertisha, there is a question that maybe you could answer or speak to, because I don't really know any statistics on this, but what outcomes are you seeing from the UT Promise or the Tennessee Promise does it seem to be having an impact on under-resourced communities?
Oh, that is a really good question. And I wish I did have the stats for that. From more anecdotal stories that I'm hearing from it, I think it is having an impact on, I'm seeing, or rather hearing more on the lower income for sure, but I don't know the breakdown of what it would be by race, ethnicity, or in relation to that. DeAndre, do you have any?
Well, I think there was an article that came out in the fall that for, I think it was African American males, that Pell Mississippi enrollment was down somewhere like 35%. And so, I think Tennessee Promise is great, but at the end of the day, it goes down to support. I think there are a lot of great programs that are good for people that have a certain layer of support, but a lot of times, in our community, that support just sitting there. The problem is holistic. So, Tanika, you touched on it. I know some of the earlier conversation touched on it as well. When they talk about eminent domain and how it destroyed the thriving community in Knoxville, that did more damage to the Black community than anything, because I was listening to or reading something earlier this week, and it said that there were more Black homeowners in 1960. I don't know if it was in Knoxville, but maybe in Tennessee than there is right now. And so when you talk about systematic racism, it was a system that destroyed the Black community. I mean, it was a strategic plan system to destroy the Black community. So now here we are, as non-profit leaders, right, trying to build our community where, a lot of the jobs in a healthy community and a lot of the jobs that we want our kids to have, we will go to our own community for those jobs. But those jobs aren't there for our own community, right? And those support systems aren't there for our own community.
Yes, and when we talk about, and I think that's important because we also talked about establishing programs that help the whole family, not just the youth, right? So I want to give you just a scenario when we're talking about under-resourced communities and when amenities are not present. So if I am a graduate of high school and I have the option to go to school for free through Tennessee Promise for 2 years, or I can kind of get a dead-end job because I know my mom need help at home paying bills. We got siblings, right? And so again, it comes back to the options that you're being faced with. So it's not necessarily that Tennessee Promise can't be a great thing, but again, it's layers to this. So you have to think of the whole piece. And you have to think about why why Black males may not be accepting the Tennessee Promise. Well, one, because now their role has changed. They are now the man of the house. They have to step up. They have different responsibilities. But if we can start creating programs and putting systems in place that benefit the family as a whole, then that young man would not be forced to make that decision. And so with that,
can I say something?
Yeah.
I was just going to say to add to that, it's the support at home and in the community, but also you have to realize Knoxville, which is one of the things I love about Knoxville. Knoxville is a small, big city in a sense. Like, you can hear and learn about good and bad things that are happening in the city. And so I think when we think about the question with the UT Promise and the support that you can get to go to school for free, you have to realize that, people talk, students talk. And so if they're getting into these institutions and, it's not a secret, a lot of, the racial climate that happens at UT. So you can Google that and see that. Students are talking. So they might go for a semester, they might go for a year. But if you have only focused your efforts on this recruitment piece and not a retention piece, and really looking at the culture and the climate of the setting that you're wanting Black males, Black youth in general to enter into, they're going to return to what they know and what's comfortable, even if it's not a place where they can thrive. So DeAndre, I agree. You got to support the whole picture, the whole unit. And I think that happens from community to institutions to businesses, whatever it may be. You have to look at that support holistically.
Well, you are absolutely right. People will fall back to what they know and what's comfortable, even if it's a toxic, dangerous, violent environment or situation, because that's what they know. That's what they understand.
Right.
And so, I think that people and organizations and leaders need to understand, as we develop plans, you need to understand that if those systems of support aren't in place for, that student that maybe have Tennessee Promise, that may had excellent grades in college, they can't succeed if those systems of support are not in place. So, at Penultimate Development, if we want to get kind of scientific theories around it, Maslow's hierarchy needs theory talks about those lower level needs have to be met before those upper level needs have to be met. Gangs use that strategy to use and manipulate kids to give them a false sense of belonging and security to get them to do their biddings. They're providing those lower level needs. Mm-hmm. People that are in this chat, that the three of us, our children do not worry about lower level needs. My children do not worry about, what they're going to eat, clothes, none of that stuff. When guys are in my program, it's a residency program. They live here for 10 months. When they're here, and it's awesome to watch their minds transition and start to focus on some of those higher level needs, because their living is, my residential loss is great. All they have to worry about is getting to work on time, doing what they're supposed to be doing. Those lower level needs are already being met. So now they can focus on some of those higher level needs. And so as we develop and create these programs, we got to realize that some of the folks that we serve do not have the social capital to be successful. Mm-hmm. We have to develop those systems of support, be able to support those folks.
All right, and that is great. And so that will segue us into our next topic, because we can't talk about Knoxville and inequitable communities and under-resourced communities without talking about the poverty rate. And so we're going to talk about that for just a little bit here. And so before COVID, Knoxville's poverty rate among African Americans was 42%. Black people only make up about 17% of the population. So almost half of Black Knoxville lives in poverty. Let that sink in. Almost half. In your city, where you live, where you thrive, where you go to work every day, where it's out of sight, out of mind for some, but it is a daily reminder for others. My purpose in life right now is, no matter what table I sit at, no matter what board I sit on, I'm showing up for Black people, because at this point, how could I not with those type of numbers? I'm talking about the creation of Black wealth. And when I'm in conversations with people, I'm asking, how can you help with that? Where do you fit in that narrative? It is important that our allies and our friends and people watching realize that our organizations who are out here doing important work, we need more than snack donation, or clothing donations, or food pantries, right? That's kind of what we consider charity. It's good and it's great. But if we do not start helping put resources in communities that help Black people build wealth in a community, our Black people in Knoxville in particular will continue to decline and will continue to die. And when I mean die, I mean die literally, like we saw during the pandemic, like we're saying right now with our youth. The Black people in Knoxville are suffering. Not 100%, not all,
Tanika,
but as a whole, we're suffering. And so, yes, go ahead,
let me
DeAndre.
ask you this: How does Knoxville's Black poverty rate rank amongst other cities our size, or even in the Southeast? Do you know those numbers?
That's a good question.
You're number one.
We're number one.
You're number one.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
So I do know the answer to that. For cities our size, for the poverty rate, for when we in comparison to Black and white, we are number one. We are number one for something we do not want to be number one for. And so we're first on that
So
list.
at the end of the day,
And so,
Knoxville can be considered one of the worst places to live for Blacks.
Mm-hmm.
yes. And I think I've seen somebody in the chat ask, how can we make this? This is not what they said verbatim, but basically, how can we make Knoxville a better safe space for Black professionals coming into the community? Well, one, we gotta fix the poverty rate.
Right.
Because if I'm a Black professional looking to move into a city and I see that statistic, I am not moving there. That's all I need to see. And so I know one of the things that Shura Foundation is doing is we're trying to facilitate the creation of Black wealth among developing Black entrepreneurs. But that's just one layer. That's just one thing that can be done. So I want to ask you guys, what are some other ways that we can start creating Black wealth in our communities?
Well, I think I said it already once. I think it comes down to leadership, because let's just be honest with ourselves. If we don't have Black leaders in positions of authority that's serving inner city kids, that's on boards of organizations serving inner city kids, you don't have it in other sectors in our community. It's not there. I probably would say you have it in some places, like Oak Ridge Natural Labs. You probably have it within the University of Tennessee, maybe in city county government. But Black supervisors, Black managers, Black VPs, Black directors, Black VPs, Black directors, Black executives, you don't see in Knoxville. I have so many friends that I graduated from University of Tennessee, met my wife here, and was able to make a career out of what I do. But so many of my friends in a high number of sectors, do not. And so, at the end of the day, with social media, you see these same people, right, that leave our community, and you see how they are thriving and they're so successful in the Louisville, Kentuckys, in the Charlotte, North Carolinas, in the Atlantas, in the Austin, different places. Those same people, that same talent, right? That same fantastic knowledge could have been here and help build and help make Knoxville great. So, at the end of the day, Knoxville is missing out on a whole lot of opportunities, and it's going to be left in the dust.
No, that's absolutely right. And Kertisha, do you want to kind of like, Kertisha is a transplant. Like she mentioned in her bio, she is not from Knoxville, but she is a young professional and she is still here. And so I would love for her to kind of talk about her experience of living in a city with such a high poverty rate among Black people. And not only that, just kind of what the experience has been, even in the workplace.
Yeah, to kind of go back to your original question of how do you create Black wealth, I think
Yeah.
that has to start with centering the Black businesses that already exist. And you could probably find representation. I could make a list of all the Black organizations that I know of in Knoxville and how it's representative of most of the industries. So that means if you are looking for caterers, for event planners, for nonprofits, whatever it may be, the way that you can encourage and, continue Black wealth development is by centering the folks who already are developing Black wealth, right? So I think that's first and foremost. And that really leads to why I think Black young professionals might come to Knoxville but don't stay in Knoxville, is we see that. I'm originally from Orlando. I've, lived out in the Midwest, but have friends across the country in larger, more diverse places. And the biggest difference that I've noticed from their experience to mine is that, being able to find Black or any ethnic business, any, racial or ethnic makeup of a business, you don't have to go to a specific area or dig through information or, talk to someone on the side and be like, hey, do you know where I could find some soul food? Like, you don't have to have those conversations. It's effort that I don't have to spend. I think as a Black person in America, as a Black young professional, there's this tax of time and talent and energy that goes into finding spaces where I feel safe and comfortable. So if as a city, if as a community, you can decrease the amount of taxation that has on me as a Black young professional, then I'm more likely to stay. For me, I've found community in Knoxville. I've been so fortunate to be able to do that. And so that's really what keeps me here. But that's me knowing, I think, DeAndre, you said it earlier, like having the social capital to plug in and connect in those ways that support me and fortify me. If you don't have the time, if you don't have the energy, you don't have the ability to do that, you're just going to leave and go where you can find that a lot easier. So I think that really speaks to how you not only, I guess, really in centering and supporting and empowering Black wealth development, you then create a space where Black professionals will come and stay and make Knoxville home.
Yeah, and so one of the questions in the chat is, what is your opinion on the recruitment of Black leaders from outside the community or from other cities?
Talent is talent. I mean, we need talented people here in our community, and a fresh set of eyes is also, I think, important. Where maybe you have someone outside our community that that has had some success, right? We want to invite, recruit. I would think if I'm the Chamber of Commerce, I would want to bring those folks. Want to bring those folks in here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, especially when you're talking about developing Black communities, right? I think it's important, one, though, that you work with the Indigenous leaders who are already in the community and find out where the holes and the gaps are. Because I think sometimes before we go out of the city and try to find somebody else, we may realize that person is already in the city, right? And so, especially when you are, and I'm not sure if the person who asked this question is disconnected, but if you are disconnected from a community before making assumptions about what exists in that community, it's important that we do the research and find out. And if we find out that that person, that position doesn't already exist, then I think, heck yeah, let's go look for that person outside of the city. But first, we want to just make sure that we are doing our due diligence, right? And so I was doing some research a little bit, and I haven't dug too deep, but I did enough to know that cities, when they get their federal funds, that trickles down to all the cities, a lot of them get block grant funds. And those block grant funds, the funding that you get is based on a formula. And part of that formula is your poverty rate. So that means that in essence, long story short, basically the higher the poverty rate, the more money your city will likely get. But we know that the most marginalized aren't seeing the dollars. And we know that the poverty rate here in Knoxville among African Americans, like Dre was talking about with the housing, has worsened since the 60s. The poverty rate has gotten worse since the 50s and the 60s. So I feel like our city has a responsibility to do more work with our poverty rate. Our cities are getting dollars, they're getting grant funds from the federal government to tackle the issue, and they are not. And we have to hold our city officials more accountable in that space. We all have a right to look at it. We all have a right to see what can we do about it. But we have to hold our city officials accountable in that space, especially when they're getting millions of dollars every year that our communities just don't see. And so that is more of a statement, not a question. But if you want to speak on that, please feel free.
Now this is a uncomfortable but necessary conversation, right? So I'm going to say something very uncomfortable. Maybe Knoxville just hadn't. I don't think we've hit rock bottom. I don't think we lost enough yet. I don't think that 4 kids dying in 2 months from gun violence is enough to wake people up. I don't think we've hit our rock bottom yet. And that's sad. I mean, that's kind of sad to say.
Well, at this,
the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and expect a different result. When I started Penultimate Development, I didn't have a blueprint to go off of because there was no organization in the country that was doing it the way that I know from my experience with all my degrees and masters and all of that stuff. Like this is what needs to be done. And I'll be honest, I'm still under resourced. We talked about those federal dollars, those block grant dollars, very competitive dollars to go after. There's a reason why large nonprofits have, $500,000 or more invested in their development team. So when they sit down at that table, they're going to put together the best presentation to get that funding, right? And we already talked about that marginalized or that diluted impact that comes out of it. Someone, me and Tanika, we talk about it all the time. And that is, a lot of times we're left out of that conversation. We don't have the resources to even get to that table per se. And so, like I said, Knoxville has not lost enough. We have not hit rock bottom enough to change the way that we do business and support young people and support the Black community as a whole.
Well, I really, and that may be true. And I hate that. I hate that if that, to even think about that as truth, because I'm like, how much more can the city take from us? How much more can we lose? And I can talk about this all day because I'm passionate about it. So I'll make sure to move on. But I'm just like, we have nothing. The Black community has nothing else to give. We have nothing else to give. But, every time we turn around, there's a take and there's a take and it's draining. And so with that,
if you look at history, what's happening, it's already happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at history, the Great Migration, where, Southerners from Alabama and Mississippi, some of the, most racist places in our country, they migrated, they left. Right. Mm-hmm. Now we have first, second, third generation Black business professionals. They come to Knoxville and they're like, it's not here for me. So they're leaving. I mean, they're migrating out. So Knoxville has to pivot. Right. We have to make changes. Our leaders have to make changes the way that we do business, the way that we do government, and I'm not going to use the word, the phrase, give us a seat at the table, but they have to say, how can we hedge Black leaders and Black businesses to build their own table? Okay. Now let me just go a little bit deeper. Okay, because folks hate to use that word reparations, but I use the word hedge. Right now, the city is probably, I don't know, maybe it's already happened, maybe they've already approved it, but $60 million on top of $100 million in private investments of the ball field, right? Well, if it's $160 million investment, the city is hedging, or the county is hedging the 60 million, right? To go on top of the 100 million in private that's going to support the businesses around it. Now, I mean, I guess that's tax. That's a tip. That's tax incentive financing, or whatever you want to call it. To me, that's reparations. It's not reparations to the Black community, but hey, I don't have $100 million, but I could probably scrounge together, $500,000. And hey, if the city want to support it and give me $300,000 for an investment, that's a hedge. Yeah, I would do that. So, I mean, like I said, it's holistic. We have to look at the whole, but I think at the end of the day, excuse me for being so passionate. At the end of the day, Tanika, I think it comes down to green, to that currency. And because, I think the problems in our community truly started when they destroyed the Black businesses in Knoxville.
No, it did. That's exactly when it started. And that's what I'm saying. Ever since that moment, and okay, let me come back, because I was about to go down a path I probably shouldn't go down.
But, I apologize for going down that path, for leading you down that path. But we know good together, Tanika. You know that.
But ever since that time in Knoxville, the plight of Black people have gotten worse. And it's a real conversation that we need to have. And I know when I'm in front of city officials, and when they're talking about seeking money from outside themselves to help the plight of the Black community, I put the onus back on them, because it was the local government that disenfranchised Black Knoxville, and it's the local government's responsibility to make it right again. And so, and with that, we can't have the conversation about the history and plight of Black Americans, Black Knoxville, and honestly just having an uncomfortable but necessary conversation that a lot of the accumulation of white wealth was around the disenfranchisement of Black and brown people in this country. And so when we're talking about what can our white allies do to support us in this space, we ask that you use your social capital to help elevate Black voices, Black organizations, Black leadership, and these businesses to help keep our Black professionals here in Knoxville. We ask that you use your financial resources to help elevate Black-led organizations to expand upon the work that they are already doing, and trust us to know that we can and are able to manage funds and lead our own organizations. And so we have to step outside the box, check our biases and our stereotypes, and start building relationships. And so with that, when we're talking about being a leader in the community, all of us have been in leadership roles at white-led institutions. And I know DeAndre spoke to it a little bit ago about being in a room where there's not even less than 5%, probably less than 5 or less than 2. Sometimes you're the only one in the leadership role, in the room, on the board. And so let's talk about, I want to hear, what has your experience been and its effect on Black mental health? Kertisha, you can start.
Yeah. So I have grown up like serving in the community and like being in leadership positions that are usually predominantly white spaces. And it's my family, my mom in particular, all the strong women in my family prepared me early for what I was to encounter. And so the idea of, being seen as too aggressive. And like for those who know me know, like I don't even when I do, it's not, in a sense like aggressive, if you will. So really that's obviously a stereotype. That's a bias that a lot of people have. So dealing with like if I speak up or speak out about an injustice or a microaggression or something that's going on, or ignoring when a group of individuals or a particular issue is being ignored, and I want to highlight that, being seen as the angry Black woman, that's always a trope that I have to endure. And I think a lot of like lack of representation isn't just impactful to the person who's in that space, but I think it prevents others from wanting to even enter the space. And so for me, it's when you only have one, Black individual or one person of color on your leadership team or even in your organization as a whole, that's already putting that person on guard. And that's already, in a sense, sending a message. We don't really welcome or cultivate a space that allows for people of all different, racial, ethnic, makeup to be a part of our organization. And so, I pursue these positions because it's, how I'm able to, continue my career trajectory and to get the skills that I need. But definitely in the last couple of years, it's really taken a toll. I'm grateful that, because of my counseling background, I know the importance of getting help in therapy and kind of working through a lot of that. So I have that support. I have my family back home. I have friends that I have here who I can lean on. But it takes a toll when you're always the person who is speaking up or standing against, injustice in some way, and you don't get that matched with the people around you.
DeAndre?
So, Katisha, I mean, she is dead on. My parents, they're both professionals and college and master's degrees. My wife's parents are both professionals, and they prepare you for the fact that being a person of color, you will be put into a box, you will be marginalized, and you will be considered less than. There's been too many times where, in order to, you always have to give your own credibility statement every time you meet someone why you are in that room, every single time. And, it's exhausting. It's very much exhausting. And I'm going to go ahead and say this because I just want everyone to understand. I do not share this with people, period. I don't. This is something that is a career killer. Okay. These what we're discussing, this conversation may be uncomfortable for you to hear. It's even more uncomfortable, for us to say. So, when we talk around mental health, I'm not a mental health expert and I don't perceive to be, but let me just say that, when I was in a position, in a job of authority, I always felt like I had to prove that I was equal to everyone else in the room. And they always seem to tell me, if not directly, but indirectly, we talk about microaggression, that I was less than, and I should be happy that I'm just in the room, right? And
Mhm.
so that plays a toll on you mentally. The reality of it is that I realize is that I am not less than, and I'm not even equal to when I'm in that room. I'm actually greater than. I actually, with me being in your space, I'm adding value where 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3. 1 times me times whatever I'm in equal 10. And so the problem with that, it comes down to opportunity. So I'm just gonna say this, and I'll be quiet, Tanika. When I decided to go out on my own and start a nonprofit, I wanted to make sure that my wife and I, we bought the building. I didn't want to use nonprofit dollars. I didn't want to go out to ask someone to help promote something that I believed in. So I went and bought the building myself. I called a bank in town in Knoxville, the president of that bank, and I said, hey, I have a building I want to buy. I just got off the phone with the seller. I'm going to put 50% down, and I want to finance the other 50%. His response to me was, yeah, well, let's talk with such and such, a person that was on my old board. Let's talk and sit down with him. Because DeAndre, I don't know. He didn't hear that I had 50% down. He missed out on opportunity. I called a friend of mine who happens to be a Black banker who I probably should have called to begin with. And I said, hey, listen, I have 50% I want to put down on this building. We need to figure out a way for me to finance the rest. His response to me was, let's roll. So, Knoxville misses out, businesses missing out, organization misses out when you let race stop you, right, from doing business, from hiring people, from working with people. But to finish this, mental health, it's exhausting is what it is. It's exhausting. And that's why people leave. That's why people leave Knoxville, because at some point you just get kind of exhausted. So
DeAndre, I know, Tanika, you be trying to keep us in line and we just not here for it. DeAndre, I love that last point you just made. It, like, letting race stop you from, like, that was a missed opportunity on his part, on that white banker's part. But I think, we can expand that to any interaction that, your employer, you as a coworker, staff member, whatever it may be. When you let race get in the way of how you engage with your Black colleagues, that's not only, impacting them and essentially sending them away, but it's also stifling creativity and innovation that could really rejuvenate your business. And so not only is it, you're losing quality, beyond quality employees, you're also losing the opportunity to have a greater business. So it really works and influences all aspects of the field.
It really does. And you all both said some great things. And the microaggression, don't let race stop you. I mean, y'all, this is real stuff that Black people in Knoxville, and I want to just keep it to Knoxville because I want you to see that it's real. It's in your city. This is not something going on over there. No, it's going on right here. Black people in white-led organizations who don't feel like it's a safe space, where they are the minority, where they feel like you hired them because they checked the box. I have been there. I have felt like I have sat on boards because you needed a Black person to sit on the board. But once I got to the table, you didn't want to hear me. They didn't want to acknowledge what I was saying. It was like I wasn't even there. And then, just the microaggressions that happen daily, it wears on the mental psyche because it's stuff that you're dealing with personally. And then the things that go on globally, the George Floyds, the Breonna Taylors, the Ahmaud Berries, the, under-resourced communities and how it's affecting our youth within, our community. It is hard. It is hard to deal with mentally, but Black people are resilient. and we make it through and we get through it. But with that, I'll leave us with this, and then I'll bring Holly back up. But as the quote goes, to be Black in America is to be in a rage all the time. That is the truth. And so we thank you for listening to us today. We thank you for engaging in Q&A. And that's all I have. So Holly, if you want to come back up and tell us what we are doing next.
Hey,
Maybe.
Tanika.
We are still here. Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Stan.
You guys got me and not Holly. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stan. Okay.
No,
Hey,
I apologize to you.
Can I add a last thought?
Go for it.
So during this pandemic, my kids and myself, we picked up Cuban, right? We're Cubers now. And most people, even as a kid, you get one side and that's it, right? And there are many colors on this cube, but Knoxville, one side is incomplete. We have to have all sides of this cube if we want to truly have a thriving community that is enjoyed by all. So I just wanted to end with that visual picture.
That was great. Any other points?
Nope, Stan, you're on.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. All that stuff was very powerful. Some stuff that I definitely didn't know about. So I appreciate it. I appreciate all three of you guys doing this and the people attending. Thank you for doing that. So if you found this to have some sort of value, which I hope you did, we are asking that since this is a free event, if you guys could go and donate to any of these three great people's foundations, whatever they're doing, we would greatly appreciate that. They took time out of their day to do this, so if we can give back to them, we would greatly appreciate that. I know they would too. So again, we also want to invite you to the 21-day Racial Equality and Social Justice Challenge through the YWCA. It's a powerful tool for educating yourself about systematic racism and racial inequalities faced by our community and beyond. Again, thank you guys for speaking. Thank you for the attendees. I think we have about 20 minutes left. People want to bounce around and network. But again, thank you guys, and y'all have a great one.